The Open Source Creative Podcast, episode 53. I'm back.
Oh, we're going to toast marshmallows, are we?
Could be. That's better.
Hi, welcome. This is the Open Source Creative Podcast, a podcast where I ramble on about creativity, process, and open source software. I'm Jason Van Gumster, and I haven't recorded an episode for this show in 6 years, almost 6 years. It's 5.5, 5 3/4. I got busy, but I would like to start it again. I figure at this point in time, kind of open source software is more important than ever. You've got so many things coming out at us from different angles. And it's particularly important for those of us who are doing creative stuff, right? Because there are so many opportunities for like more vendor lock-in, especially with all these other tools and stuff going on. It's kind of troublesome. It's a little bit annoying and a little bit bothersome. And I think that at the very least, letting people know that you have options. You're not required to stick to a subscription. You're not locked into a particular program because if you don't keep paying a subscription fee for it, you can't open your files anymore. You're not stuck with just the results of some large language model that kicks out data, kicks out some kind of output that may or may not be editable, usable, or changeable in the future. Being able to have control, full creative control from the tool all the way out to your outputs and the entire process throughout is more important now than it ever has been. And that's kind of the reason. That's one of the reasons. There's other reasons, of course. Some of them are selfish, and I'll get into that at some point. But that's why I think it's worth it to bring the show back. I think it's worth it to talk about the tools that are available to people, the things that you can do, the things that you can use to get your work done, to get creative output made, and not be bound to something proprietary. You have, again, full creative freedom. That's the purpose, and that's why this show is important, I think, and I think that's why I want to do it again. Now, for those of you who have been waiting for 6 years for another episode, hi. It's been too long. I miss it, and I'm looking forward to talking more with you. If you happen not to have been one of those people sitting at the edge of your seat waiting, because I don't imagine there's many of you. That said, let me treat this as a bit of an introduction, and then for the people who have been around for a second, I give you a bit of an update of where things have been for me in this particular point of thing. Hi there. I keep saying hi. I'm out of practice. What am I going to do? I'm Jason Van Gumster, and I have been using open source software specifically for creative output, for creating things, for making things for over 2 decades now. I'm very, very big in the Blender community. I really, really, in terms of big into the Blender community, I don't mean that I'm a big person in the Blender community. I mean that I've been in the Blender community for a long time, and I've been using Blender for a big chunk of all the creative stuff that I've done. I wrote 5 separate editions of Blender for Dummies. I wrote GIMP Bible, and I've done teaching and education in open source tools for quite some time. And up until a little bit ago, I was also the director of marketing for Autotroph. Autotroph runs CG Cookie, SuperHive, and Orange Turbine, which are also very big in the Blender community and serving that community overall. But of course, 3D is not necessarily the only thing that I do. I also write. I do jewelry making. I do all the stuff that goes in design. Basically, if it's creative and it's output, and there's an audience for it, I've probably done it at least once. That's kind of the way where it's at. So that's me. That's me in a nutshell. I've done a lot of talking, a lot of speaking. I've got 52 previous episodes of this that date back prior to that, and really the whole thing is about trying to share more of what can be done with open source tools and show that you can actually do high quality, creative, cool things with these tools. It's like, I can't use it because that's not the case. And because I have this sort of varied interest and varied pursuits, I find myself working in a lot of different media, digitally and traditionally. And so I end up using all sorts of different open source tools for everything from video editing to 3D to writing to graphic design and whatnot. So with that in mind, let me bring you a little bit up to speed with where I am and what has happened with me in the last 6 years, because it's hopefully it's a little bit interesting, and then we can get on with other episodes that are hopefully even more interesting to you. What you're seeing behind me is I'm going to say office/bedroom, because just about 5 years ago, my family and I, we sold everything that we have, for the most part, sold our house and moved into a motorhome. And we've been traveling full time for the last 4.5 years at this point. It'll be 5 years in October. And for the most part, traveling within the United States, but we do have jaunts out here and there, either by plane or on the occasion that we can cross the border when it makes sense. We have two country above us that we can go at, but usually when we go international, we're not taking the RV with us. But yeah, that's been an exciting and interesting approach to travel, which also, for somebody who deals with a lot of digital work and a lot of technology, thinking about conversations like, how do you deal with internet? How do you work remotely? How do you do these sort of things? And how do you do these sort of things while still also using open source tools to do that? And I've been doing it. Even have a little file server. It sits right there. It sits right above my thing. For the people only listening to this on audio, I'm pointing to things and you can't see them, so you should watch the video one too. But yes, so I've been traveling full time for 4.5 years, and I'm sure future episodes I will be talking about how open source can tie into that, creative output can tie into that, and how it's affected the way that I see things and play things. It's a wild lifestyle. It's pretty cool. So that's the biggest, probably the largest thing that is different from 2020. That's 2020. So other things happened since 2020, and I won't go into world events and whatnot, but it would seem that a lot of things have happened in there. But so that's one thing. I have had a great time doing those sort of things. I believe a few more, at least 2 editions of Blender for Dummies has been released since that time. So the 4th edition of Blender for Dummies came out, and then we did the Blender All-in-One for Dummies. And the main reason for that is because if anybody's been using Blender for any period of time, you know that Blender develops quickly. It has a lot of things going on with it, and always gets new features. And so every time that we did an update to Blender for Dummies, we'd have to add pages because Blender got new features. And we've gotten to a point where Blender has so many features, and to cover all of them, or even at a beginner level in a book like Blender for Dummies, which is meant to be a reference, the standard Dummies format doesn't fit that page count. So we migrated it to the Blender All-in-One for Dummies, which basically that's typically the Dummies series uses that as the all-in-one part of that is typically it's 4, 5, 6 books packed as a single book. Usually you'll do that for like a creative suite or an office suite, and each of the little sub applications within that would be an internal book for the all-in-one. Blender has so much as the Swiss Army chainsaw of graphics that we know that it is, that Blender gets its own all-in-one. And so that came out actually almost 2 years ago. So might be due for an update on that one. But that came out. I also wrote an updated farming simulator modding a book, farming simulator modding with Blender. Whew. And I wrote that one. That was a commission piece as well. So yeah, I wrote that book. I co-authored that book. So let me slow down. I co-authored Farming Simulator modding with Blender for the good folks at Giants Software who make Farming Simulator, which, for anybody who knows, the modding community for that, really they use Blender for a whole ton of it. And as far as the modding process goes, Blender's a first class citizen for that process. And so I was able to help and contribute the Blender components for that book. More books and more writing. I have to look back at the records. I'm not sure if I had this one out before then, but a book of fiction that I wrote, a series technically actually called Fulcrum. Fulcrum Season 1. So it's actually a serialized book. It's actually, I have a copy of it. This one. This is my piece of fiction that I wrote, and yes, that's my pen name, JJ Vega, that's basically what happens if you take Jason Van Gumster, the initials of that, and try to pronounce it, JJVG. That's my pen name for it, because, that's why I did that. In any case, that came out, and it's been a lot of fun working on that. That's it's an interesting story. If anybody's curious about that, I'm happy to talk more about it. It's actually structured as the story structure is basically an animated series, about 7 episodes, but I wrote it as 7 small books that, again, got crammed into one. There's a theme going on here. So that book came out a little after this, the last episode I recorded for Open Source Creative. Yes, the cover art was done by a fantastic artist who she painted it in Krita, and I did the layout in Scribus, and the logo design and those components were done in Inkscape, and the writing was all done in Markdown format. I converted it with Pandoc. I did adjustments in Sigil for it. So all of these are open source tools, all of these things. So yeah, you can literally write and format and publish print and EPUB books, all with open source tools. You don't have to, use anything closed source to do any of it. It's actually pretty cool. There have been some updates recently to my pipeline, my writing workflow, and I'll have to use a whole episode about that one because that one's kind of interesting. So that book came out, and other things. Oh, so for a little while there, this is less on the software side of things, other than the marketing and promotion of it. I was also making wooden rings. I would make rings made out of wood by a process of self-laminating them and making them. And I ended up making a whole line of them and built a brand. So again, Creative Output, trying to sell Creative Output, logo designs in Inkscape. The website was put together using Hugo, and all the writing in Creative, the text components of that, I basically wrote it with them. So again, more Creative Output, more using open source tools, even for output that is not digital, right? These are rings made out of wood. These are things that you have to sit down for a little bit and bend and spend a lot of time sanding, and then polishing and those sort of things. But the promotion, the attempt to sell it, those sort of things, all come out of that. And then going back to the book side of things, I ended up writing a little web app I'm sort of this called Table Scraps, and Table Scraps is no longer in existence. I launched the project, ran it for a little bit, and then closed it down actually a couple months ago. And basically what it did was it helped collect public-facing sales data about books that you've published. So if you publish a book on Amazon or Kobo or Barnes & Noble or any of these other places, if you want to see if you got a new review, if somebody rated the book, or Amazon also has a tendency to want to change prices on a product without necessarily informing anybody that did it, and you get no notification of that. So Table Scraps was a tool that I wrote that would track all of these different things and then send an email to you to let you know when on a daily basis what changed. As basically information for somebody who had published their own books and wanted to keep track of that information across all the different platforms, because it would take a while to do that manually. And I wrote this all, again, Python, open source tools, open source pipeline, graphics were done in Inkscape. The actual web app itself, I have not open sourced. I haven't quite, now that it's, I've shut it down, I have to think about what I want to do with the actual source code. I'm not entirely sure that it is novel enough or interesting enough for anybody to want to extend on their own. Maybe that's something someone can talk to me about. At that point, when I produced it, when I created it, I was not open sourcing it at that time. But maybe I will. Maybe I'll have a whole episode where we talk about what it is, what it does, if it would be valuable, and whether or not open sourcing a bit of code makes sense with a project like that. So that's another thing that happened. So that one opened up and shut down. The most recent thing that I've done on my own work and my own things has been with, I'd say about a year ago, I got, I'll say irrationally obsessed with puns and wordplay, and particularly ones that I can do visually. And got to the point where I ended up doing a whole range of designs, a whole library, if you will, of designs of silly, stupid puns, dad jokes, and those sort of things. And actually, this shirt that I'm wearing right now, which, again, if you're watching it on video, you can see it. There it is. If you're not watching it on video, I'll have to describe it for you. It is a picture of a alpaca with big pouty lips, and it says, "The alpaca lips is upon us." It makes me giggle every time because, again, irrationally obsessed with it. But I ended up doing a whole series of these designs, and I make them on t-shirts and stickers, which goes into a whole nother realm of one, trying to do these designs, figuring out how to do deliverables for those kinds of physical products when I move physically every couple of weeks. And then, of course, the sales platform and these sort of things for it. And that's been an interesting approach in looking at all of that. And so that's probably worth having a conversation about, because that is my sales platform. I'm not currently using an open source sales platform. And maybe it makes more sense. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I just don't know of a good one to pick. For what it's worth, primary sales is on Shopify. So I might see if there are solid open source alternatives that I can self-host for that. But for the time being, that's what I'm using for my Pun in the Sun brand of designs. And what I've also started offering and started doing is I am, and this is probably the most recent thing, I am offering coaching, consulting, and other services for people in the Blender ecosystem. And there's a reason also why I say Blender ecosystem versus Blender community, because and again, this might end up being a blog post. It's a whole other conversation, but for the time being, I'm going to say the Blender ecosystem. And so I'm offering one-on-one coaching for individuals, for people who want to improve their skills with Blender. I am also offering consultation services to organizations, studios, tool makers who want Blender in their pipeline. So they either need to train up their Blender staff, or train up their staff in Blender, or they need to integrate Blender in the pipeline with usually it's I/O tools. It's usually import and export to the pipeline in some sort of seamless manner. And so that's something that I can that I'm offering as a service as well. And then the other one that's an interesting one is a for anybody who has made products in Blender, add-ons, asset packs, training courses, those sort of things. I noticed. So I spent 4 years working as the director of marketing for Autotroph. And the thing that I noticed there in that role is that a lot of us in the Blender ecosystem are fairly young entrepreneurially, not by age so much, but as entrepreneurs, the Blender ecosystem is fairly young. It's not as mature. Doesn't approach business quite the same way yet, and so as a result, a lot of people don't necessarily see the sales that they want to get and those sort of things. And so, using that experience, using the things that I've known, things that I've seen between my own Blender experience for the last 2 decades and what I've done on the marketing side of things, I'm offering those services as well. I put all those on my personal website, and I'll put that in the show links. But that's not so much here to pitch that and sell that to you. That's just saying that's one of the other things that I'm up to. And so, yeah, those are the high points. That's the stuff that I've been doing. I've been traveling. I have been continuing to write. I have a new book that I'm working on right now. This one's another fiction one. And so that one will be under the JJ Vega name. I've been doing the t-shirt designs. I've actually also been doing short little videos of my lies that I did for my other book, Definitely True, which is literally it's a book of lies. I did a lie of a day for 5 years or so, and so I have all that material that I'm making videos of and posting those up and using that as a weird cross promotional thing. Which maybe I'll talk about business stuff during future episodes. I don't know. Is that something that's interesting to you? That's my question for you. Is I feel that this is an important time for open source software, and particularly for creative tools that are built with open source. A lot of the software space, a lot of the tech space, actually half of my feed these days talks about LLMs and talks about AI tools and these sort of things, whether they're Gen AI or chatbots or sort of any other sort of AI-based technology. AI is the major buzzword of everything. And I really wanted to do an episode without even saying it, but whatever. The thing is that with all of these things going on, the open source space in particular is saturated with this conversation, partially because software development has started to rely fairly heavily on these tools to amplify what people are doing. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it's always in there. It's always in the conversation, and it bleeds its way in to creative tools. And people start forgetting that creative tools, LLMs can generate, and the pitch is that an LLM can circumvent the need to create, the need to have any of these tools whatsoever, which I think is wrong, or at least I think is untrue. Right or wrong is another conversation altogether. That's another episode I'll probably be going into. But because so much of the conversation about tooling, so much about the conversation about this stuff is about tooling and output, the notion of being able to have your own tools and control your own tools and make your creative outputs using open source tools where you have absolute control of what the tool does, how it does it, who it talks to, whether it phones home. You can do things online, self-hosted. You can do things offline. I think that this is an important conversation to have. I think that there's enormous value, especially right now, in having open source creative tools to produce the things that we love to produce. And it's not just about the output. It's about the joy of actually making, right? It's the joy of making stuff. And then, trying to earn a living making that stuff is also pretty nice. So that's sort of the businessy angle that I'll probably be leaning in as well, because it's been top of mind for me most recently. I am really hopeful that all this recording is coming together, and I hope I don't have to do too many jump cuts. But by and large, that's what I have for you. So I have to make sure that all of the setup for the Open Source Creative Podcast is still in place. I'm pretty sure it is. People still do actually download episodes of it. And so I got the commenting working on the site. I got all the hosting so it can be played. And these things are all there. And so really it's just about me putting this up and doing that. And so because comments are available on this episode, which is episode 53, if you have ideas of things for me to talk about in future episodes, if you want to talk to me in a future episode, I want this thing to keep going, and I'm going to work really hard to make sure it does. So in the comments for this episode on opensourcecreative.org, say stuff there. You don't want to put something in comments there? Track me down on any of the social media channels you happen to be on. I'm Monster Java Guns. It should be pretty easy to find me. Or if you happen to have my email address or other ways of contacting me, carrier pigeon, any of them, reach out and tell me what you think. Tell me what you think this podcast should be about, because it should not be about me just rambling off aimlessly. I should be able to say something that you find interesting and valuable and should help you in your day-to-day at least a little bit, because that's what I want to do. Speaking of that, I guess it's time for me to get to work. See you next episode.
Not so fast, sweetheart.
Myself in the ship, but they've crippled it. I can't take off or fire the gun, and they're coming for me now.
And this is the last job.